You've likely become familiar with the browser storage feature inside of ListenLayer, which allows you to save information into the user's browser using cookies, local storage, or session storage, primarily based on data layer activity. You can write rules for when you want to store that information, as well as the actual information that you want to have stored, which can include variables and a number of other things, such as timestamps and other functions. But once that information is in browser storage, you'll want to access it and use it in various ways. One of those ways is to access it directly in Google Tag Manager, which can be more easily done with cookies. Or you're likely familiar with the populate fields feature, which allows you to then push information from the browser storage into fields that are on your forms. So this would be useful if, for example, you're collecting user source information over time or the Google Click ID. However, there are situations where perhaps a populate fields feature is not available, or you need to extract and utilize the information from the browser in a different way. And so this video is going to talk about being able to take that browser storage information, so a key from local storage or session storage and the value of that key, or the value in a cookie itself, and actually push it back into the data layer when a specific event occurs. And the way we're going to do this is by using our custom data layer values feature here. So all listeners are going to have this custom data layer values feature, which allows you to write rules to push custom values into the data layer based on conditions. And so logically, what we would want to do is push custom values back into the data layer that include the value from browser storage. So for example, let's say I'm using a chat tool like Intercom or maybe Zoho Chat, and I'm collecting the user's source information over time using the user source listener, collecting that as a cookie or as a local storage. Perhaps every time that user then takes a critical action, such as starting a chat or filling out a form, rather than just pushing the information into a hidden field in the form, I want to push it into the data layer along with that form submission event or chat started event. And then in theory, you could grab onto that with Google Tag Manager, and you could do something like store it in a Google Sheet, or you could send it to your CRM data from that external source, and thereby enriching your data collection. So there are a number of different use cases of why we may want to get something back from browser storage and push it into the data layer. And that's what we'll be walking through. So we're going to actually stick with Gravity Forms, and we're going to turn on the custom data layer values feature. And we need a variable to push our information into. And so we've created this variable at our global settings level called user source path at conversion. So what we're interested in is grabbing the path of the user source activity over time and putting that into the data layer when a form is submitted. So just as a quick overview of where that comes from, that would be coming from the user source listener. Every time someone visits your website from a new user source or traffic source, that's going to be pushed into the data layer. In this case, we have a browser storage rule that looks at that information and it says every time that a user source is pushed into the data layer, let's do something with that. In this case, we're storing it in 3 individual keys, and one of those keys happens to be the user source path. And what we do is we add any new values to the existing value separated by a comma. So if we jump to our test website, we can actually take a look at this. Here's an example of an individual who's come to our website 3 times, one from Google Ads, one from Microsoft Ads, one from Facebook Ads. We've stored that over time. And now we're going to do something with that. We want to extract that back out of browser storage, put it back into the data layer, where it becomes readily available to Google Tag Manager or a number of other things. Now, while cookies are more easily available inside of Google Tag Manager, there isn't an out-of-the-box way to access local storage, at least as of the time of this recording. So let's dive into it. We're going to go back to our Gravity forms. Now, we enabled our custom data layer values feature, which turned on this screen called custom values. And we're going to jump in and just create a here. We're going to get user source path. So from storage. And so what we're going to do is every time a form is submitted, we want to push the actual value from the local storage into this variable that we just were looking at under global storage. And so in this case, we're going to click on insert browser storage variable, and we are going to look for that local storage path here. And we're going to save this rule. Then we're going to go ahead and publish our changes. Go back to our website here, give it a hard refresh. And we know what our user source path values are. It's the Google ads, Facebook ads, and Microsoft ads. Let's jump to our console. We see our Gravity forms have loaded. And we'll go ahead and fill one of these out. What we should see in our console is our GF form submitted event. And now in our custom values, we have the information from our browser storage available back inside of the data layer. Again, this can be extremely powerful because you can then capture this every single time a form is submitted. For example, you could send this data to GA4. You could, if you have your own ability to store first-party data, such as the actual information that the user submitted along with this value, then this would be one way to store those two things together without necessarily using the populate fields feature. And that populate fields feature may not be available for certain applications such as Intercom or Zoho Chat. And so if you're looking to capture some piece of information like this alongside those, this would be the way for you to do that.